Well, hey kids, Rio here. Welcome or welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, so today is the next in my series of film reviews. This week we'll be doing another chapter of I Like It, and I Don't Care If You Don't. We'll be talking about the 1983 animated classic, Rock and Rule.
Rock and Rule.
Okay, those of you of a certain age know what I'm talking about. Those of you that don't. Okay, so Rock and Rule was made in 1983, was from an animation studio called Nelvana in Canada. This is, in fact, an independent production. There's a bit of trivia here that I will explain this to you. See, first of all, this was actually made by animation students. Like over 200 freshly graduated animation students worked on this thing. Almost like a giant thesis project, right? And it was actually based on a short film made by students called The Devil and Daniel Mouse, which is essentially the story of Orpheus, where Daniel goes into hell and has to save his own soul by singing his way out. Very, very cute little animated feature. Well, this is an extended version of that in full length. We'll get into that a little bit in a minute. Another interesting piece of trivia, by the way, is that this was actually the first fully English language animated feature to be made completely in Canada. Neat, right? Yeah, that's apropos of nothing, I suppose, but it's kind of cool. Now, those of you that haven't seen this movie, here's a reason that some of you have never seen this movie. This is kind of a lost classic. The reason for that is very early on, the original masters were destroyed in a fire. And to this day, any copies of it you find, like on DVD, if you find old VHS tapes, they're literally captures of original VHS tapes of it. So for years, all you could ever see was this scratchy, track-marked, cigarette burns, hairs on the terrible faded color. I mean, you're talking serious generational fade. The first copy that I actually owned probably was at least a 4th generation fade. Like, it was bad. The good news for those of you who have not seen it is a company called Unearthed Films was able to get a hold of like original cells, little bits that were left behind, and after years of work, they restored a pristine copy of it that was made available on DVD. I don't know how you get that now, but if you look up Unearthed Films, that's the name of the company, hopefully you can find some ways to get it. I got one when it came out. I was part of the Kickstarter. I was stoked. But I digress.
Rock and Rule. Journey to a world where the cosmic forces of music, magic, and technology collide.
Now, our setup in the film of Rock and Rule. It is a post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction. We've already talked about how much I love those. Well, in this particular after the world scenario, there was a war. They just say in the very beginning, the first thing you see is a placard that says the war was over. So you're kind of assuming nuclear holocaust, probably. But following this war, and millions of years of evolution, the only survivors of this war were street animals. So like dogs, cats, mice, rats. These are the only animals that survive, the only living things that survive. And eventually evolved, basically into us. Evolved into these sort of, like anthropomorphic animal-human hybrids, right? So however many millions of years that we come back to this story, where we enter the story, they're in a world where music is power. It's its own magic. And we are following the erstwhile Omar and his band, who are desperately trying to be the next big thing in music so that they might have power, right? Their band is great. There are 2 featured characters within the band. Of course, the whole band is featured, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's stick to the basics, shall we? So Omar and his band are desperately trying to do something for themselves. Problem is, Omar is a little bit too full of himself. Won't listen to input from the band. And just tries to do things his own way, and it ends up not going so well. However, elsewhere in the city is a character called Mok. M-O-K, the legendary super rocker. This guy is basically a necromancer. This guy is a wizard, a sorcerer of music, literally. And he's looking for a vital component, something that's missing, for his ultimate act of magic, of spells, of power, and evil. Yes, evil. He's our bad guy, kids. And he finds it in Omar's band. Not Omar. No. Omar's girlfriend. Apparently hers is the voice that will unlock a cryptic key that will give him this great power. And this is our setup, and this is what progresses from there.
Wed with a beast from another dimension.
Now, we can talk a lot about the score on this one, because it's a principal part of the story, but we'll get back to the score in a minute. First, I want to talk about the cast. The cast on this thing is nuts. You will have seen a lot of these actors, or more like heard them, more likely, in many things over the years, okay? And almost all of these characters have two voice actors, okay? One will be the speaking voice, and one will be the singing voice, all right? And that's important, because you have talented performers that are actually going to be doing the acting, and then very talented singers and musicians that come in and do the singing portions of the whole movie. So that way you've got a nice balanced thing, and they matched them nicely. So let's start with Omar. Let's start with Omar. So Omar is actually voiced by an actor named Paul Le Mat. Now, you have heard Paul Le Mat's voice in a million things. You've actually seen him in live action stuff. You might not realize it, but you have. Paul Le Mat is the speaking voice of Omar. And oh man, does he do a great job of being a snot-faced wannabe rock star. You love Omar. You hate Omar. You'd like to beat the crap out of Omar, but you love Omar. He's our speaking voice, but then our singing voice of Omar is Robin Zander from Cheap Trick. Yes, yes. And let me just add that the band that Omar is in, now they aren't all voiced by the characters, but they are drawn to look like the members of Cheap Trick. So the other characters in the band look like Rick Nielsen, look like Bunny Carlos, yes. So it is, in fact, Cheap Trick. Now, Angel, who's another important one, actually. Angel's speaking voice is Susan Roman. And again, Susan Roman is another one that you have heard her voice a million times. You have heard her voice, you know who she is. She's the speaking voice for Angel. The singing voice for Angel is Debbie Harry from Blondie.
Beauty, songs by Deborah Harry.
Do you see why I'm such a nerd for this movie? Right? And that's only just the beginning. As far as primary characters are concerned, Mock has several singing voices. His actual spoken voice is Don Franks. And again, he's another one you would have heard in a lot of things. But his singing voice is done by several different performers.
The Beast, songs by Lou Reed and Iggy Pop.
Now, an interesting thing about the fact that Mock is actually sung by different characters, by different performers. There's actually a reason for that. Originally, they were going to cast Mock as an actual big rock star was supposed to play Mock. Unfortunately, this was an independent production. I'll get more on that in a minute, but they could not afford to hire the people they wanted to hire. The short list of people that were supposed to be the actual speaking voice of Mock include David Bowie, Tim Curry, Mick Jagger, which ironically he's drawn, kind of looks like Mick Jagger, don't he? Yeah. Gotta take a look at the trailer, you'll see. He looks like Mick Jagger. But apparently Mick Jagger was one of the people they wanted to approach and just couldn't afford them. Also Sting, apparently. Sting was also somebody else on the short list. And they couldn't afford him, so they ended up with Don Franks, who's a beautiful job with the speaking voice. And then they were able to commission musicians to do different songs. And like I said, you look at, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, these are the guys that were doing the voices. And the songs for Mock are solid. All the songs in this are pretty solid, actually. So let's move on and let's start talking about the score a little bit.
The Beat, songs by Cheap Trick and Earth, Wind and Fire.
As you can guess, a film called Rock and Roll. Music is going to be a very important aspect of this film. Now, there's two layers to the music in this film. You do have your actual score, your ambient sound, your interstitial music, and all of that. Then there are the songs. So I'm going to start with the interstitial score. Your main score was actually composed by Patricia Cullen. And she does an interesting job in this. She has done actually a lot of other stuff, mostly animation. apparently she did a Care Bears movie. And she's the one that does our ambient score, our score that keeps you moving along. Now these songs, a little bit different there. A fair amount of the songs, I don't have exact, like who exactly wrote what, but I do know that a fair amount of the songs were written by Debbie Harry, along with Chris Stein from Blondie.
Good band, hot music, the best of times. It could have lasted forever.
Just a random trivia on my part. One of the biggest holy grails for people that are fans of this movie is actually finding Angel's Song, which is the main theme that Angel sings in the movie, which was actually written by Debbie Harry and Chris Stein. She actually recorded that song years later on a solo album. And one of the holy grails is to find that, to actually find the Invocation song elsewhere. So just FYI, this movie came out in 1983, and on the official soundtrack, it's called Angel's Song. But Debbie Harry actually released it in 1989. What was the name of the album? Deaf, Dumb, and Blonde is the name of the album, and the song in that case is called Maybe for Sure. It's different lyrics, but it's the exact same song. So, it's a little bit of Reddit trivia for you there. Those of you that are fans of this movie that have been looking for that thing, there's where you find it. You're welcome. Okay, so the movie was directed by Clive A. Smith. He's been working in animation for decades. You have probably seen things he's worked on, either television or on the big screen. He's both directed and produced tons of animated things. Some things including, if you ever, I mean, this is gonna show how old I am, but like Babar, Raleigh Polly Ollie, The Adventures of Tintin. This is all stuff that he's worked on. So not a stranger to animation. Now, remember, this film was made in 1983. Okay, now there are a boatload of writers on this, which is to be expected in a feature-length animation. You're not always going to have one writer. There are several listed here, in fact, 2, 4, 5, 6, something like that. About 10 different writers. But considering the fact that this film was made over several years, things were written and rewritten and changed. In some cases, some of the writers' credits I'm seeing are the names of actors, which tells me some of these actors maybe did improvisations in which their own lines became part of the final product. So I'm not going to focus too much on the writers, only because I don't know who specifically to focus on. But understand that there were a lot of people that contributed to the story. So you can kind of see that too, because the use of tone from moment to moment is really very good. So in the end, what we're looking at here is we are looking at a beautiful piece of animation history that was made by students and musicians. It was done as a labor of love and was something that everyone just really dedicated themselves to, and the work shows. It's a film that was lost for years, with no decent copies anywhere to be found. The Unearthed Films restoration is glorious. I've never seen it so clean. And the music is great. The performances are great. I adore the animation. I love that style of animation. Like, it kind of looks like rotoscoping, but it isn't. I love this thing, you guys. This film is a big part of why I love post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction. So if you want to blame anybody, you can blame Nelvana. Rating system. Kids, you already know. This is a 5. This is 5 across the board. This is a 10 out of 2. This film is the bomb. I love this thing. I love dystopian fiction. I love the fantasy element. I love the use of music in the movie. It's music as a weapon, music as a shield. Oh man, guys, listen. If you have not seen this thing, look for it. Any copy you can find. If all you can find are those old scratchy versions that were, 6th generation off of a VHS tape, if that's all you can find, then watch it. But definitely look for the Unearthed Films restoration copy. It's so clean and so beautiful, and the sound is wonderfully restored. It's worth it. All right, kids. Well, I guess that's it for this week. If you look over here somewhere, there's a subscribe button that'll kind of get you over here. You can join up. You'll get notifications when my reviews go up and whatever other dumb crap I decide to do. Because with this channel, you never know. All right, kids, listen. I will see hopefully all of you next week. And there we go. Bye.